Success for training, whether that is handstands, strength, or flexibility, ultimately comes down to consistency and just doing the work and showing up. Yeah, bro, just do the work. Despite this, a lot of people end up being lifetime intermediates. They turn up to the gym, they do their reps, they go home, but progress is pretty stagnant. And that's because you end up doing things just a little bit mindlessly. Blindly adding more training into your practice, expecting more results, usually ends up with just one outcome: high volume, but low quality of work. To achieve the more optimal results, we need to be working at a high level of effort, and it simply just isn't possible to sustain that effort for lots and lots of sets and lots of exercises. We want to make sure that we are achieving the minimum effective dose. We're doing enough work to see progress, but most importantly, we want to make sure that that work is of the highest quality. This is where being intentional with your training can come in. It's something you can add to your training and start immediately and see better progress without making any other changes to your program or practice. Exercise cues are one way in which we can increase our intention and the quality of work that we do in our training. Everyone loves a list of form cues and things to think about with certain movements. But there's a couple of different ways that we can consider and think about cues. As a coach, I like to think about exercise cues in two different categories. That is internal and external cues or focuses. When we have an internal cue or focus, we're thinking more about how the movement feels. It's relating to a body part or a specific aspect of the movement and the pattern. This is the more common type of cues that you'll see online when people are talking about movements. Alternatively, we have external cues. This is when, instead of thinking about how the movement feels, we're thinking about the effects of the movement, such as being more task orientated and using targets in our training. You can use either or you can use both. There's no real right or wrong here because this definitely occurs on an individual level, what works for you. But I think the best way for me to kind of explain this further is just give some examples. So first, the handstand push up, a strength example of using cues. Now this is one of those movements that I see as, being a bit of a make or break with having good cues to be able to unlock. One of the biggest faults with handstand push up is just people fall backwards. They lean too much into their arms, they don't stay forward, and they fall back onto their feet when they try to press up. An example of an internal cue that we can do to fix this problem is thinking of when we press up to try and lift our feet as high as we can, or alternatively try to shift our weight forward with our shoulders and be more in the fingers of the hand. These are both internal cues that can solve this problem nicely. An example of an external cue which achieves the same thing is using a wall. And when we use the wall, we're going to try and imagine that we're going to end up in a back to wall handstand. What this does is really reinforce the trying to be lifting up and driving the heels up by having a focus of trying to hit our feet towards the wall. Technically, these are the same cues. We're trying to achieve the same focus. It's just slightly different of how we implement it. Next, let's look at some flexibility and an all-time favorite for me, which is the Jefferson curl. Just like the handstand push-up, understanding how to properly cue this one can make a massive difference with the range that you can achieve. We want to think here about using the hip flexors to help us pull us deeper into the stretch. An internal cue might be thinking about trying to close the gap or pull your stomach towards your thighs. That one works nicely and it will engage the hip flexors. But we can also use an external cue which would achieve the same result, and that would be to try and reach a target in that bottom position. The task of reaching is going to force you to contract those hip flexors. It's going to pull you deeper into the stretch. Again, the same cues will achieve the same result. It's whatever works best for you. There are countless examples of exercises and cues that we could use here, but like training, more isn't always better. I often see this the case with handstands in particular. You take something that's essentially very, very simple and make it very complicated. People have like 10 different cues that they're trying to work on in the handstand. And ultimately, you're not gonna be able to focus on them all at the same time and actually do the task, which is balancing. Again, let's think about quality over quantity. Pick 1 to 2 cues and really focus on those things in the movements to maximize and make the most out of them. An example of handstands would simply be push taller or push as high as you can and pull the belly button in. These 2 cues cover a lot of different factors that you might be working on, and it keeps it simple. It means that you're actually going to be able to make the most of what you're thinking about while still trying to balance. But that seems to be a bit of a theme at the moment on the channel: quality over quantity, really just doing the things that matter, doing it with intent, and prioritizing that quality of work. As said, that with some consistency, good things will happen. As always, if you enjoyed this one, you can hit that thumbs up button. It does help to support the channel. Right next to it is that subscribe button as well, so you don't miss out on any more future videos. But other than that, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a strong week. Peace. That's gonna be enough.